All right, and then we've got just a few final things. The one thing, I've got a very, very quick intro to pigeon fever for anyone that's interested. It's kind of been all over the media and magazines lately, so I thought it would be something good to touch on so that you at least know what they're talking about and why it's become such a big issue. So if we can pull up that presentation, I'll try to be quick going through it, but like I said, I thought it'd be interesting for... So pigeon fever is a bacterial infection that's caused by the bacteria Corynebacterium pseudotuberculosis. Traditionally, this was only seen in the southwestern states, so California, New Mexico, some parts of Texas, areas where it was really hot and dry. But it's unfortunately been making its way north over the last 4 to 5 years. I saw a couple of cases of this when I was in Idaho 5 years ago, and unfortunately we've seen some cases now up in Canada, so I'm not quite sure why it's making its way up north, but unfortunately it is. The first cases of this were diagnosed in Alberta in the summer of last year, of 2013. There was actually quite a few cases down around Clare's home, Fort Macleod, Lethbridge, Tabor, and we did see some cases, or at least reported cases up around our area this year. So what it looks like, and the reason that it gets its name, is because most often they wind up with really big abscesses on their chest, which it's hard to miss those in these pictures, but this horse has one on the right side and this one's got one on the left side. So, so again, just because of the location of them and the nature of the swelling, pigeon fever was kind of the name that it got. But keep in mind that these abscesses can affect any part of the body. So again, we'll run through a few more details of it quickly here so you know what we're up against. So pigeon fever, unfortunately, is very highly contagious. The discharge that comes out of those abscesses can very easily infect another horse. It usually takes about 3 to 4 weeks from the time they're infected until they start to show signs. So that's kind of unfortunate because the horse can move around quite a bit in that 3 or 4 week time period before anybody knows anything is wrong. The organism can also survive up to 2 months in hay and shavings and over 8 months in soil. So that's another unfortunate thing, is that it's not easy to kill if it's in the environment. Typically this is very seasonal, so most of the cases in our region anyways are seen in dry months, which are late summer and fall, or during the fly season, which this year has persisted alarmingly late. It's transmitted by insects, like mosquitoes and biting flies, horse-to-horse contact in some cases, contaminated soil where that bacteria has hidden out, and other vectors, including humans that have been touching horses with this, or at least the discharge from these horses. And the bacteria gets into the horse's body through abrasions or wounds in the skin or the mucous membranes of their mouth. What we see typically are swellings or abscess formation. So like I said before, they can be anywhere in the body, but typically they're found on the chest. Ventral abdomen is also another really common spot. Basically, the most common spots you see it are where the flies are always biting them, where they're always hanging out. Sometimes we will see first just some stiffness in the forelimbs because of the swelling of the chest. They sometimes even have a foundered horse type of gait because they're so swollen and stiff they don't want to move those front legs. When they have just the external abscesses, only about 25% of them will have a fever, but most of the time they don't even look sick. They've just got these big swellings and they're otherwise normal. It kind of varies a bit, the reported numbers, but anywhere from 2 to 8% of these horses can go on and develop infections internally. And these are much more worrisome because these horses, they're harder to diagnose, they're harder to treat, and up to 30% of these ones may die. These horses typically start with the external abscesses and then they work their way inside. So they've got a decreased appetite, they're depressed, they don't look right, may lose weight, or they may have, if one of the mass is in their chest or their abdomen, they may have signs of respiratory disease or colic as well. And often there's a bit of a delayed time frame from when they have the external abscess to when they develop signs of the internal abscess. So something to watch for if hopefully this doesn't affect any of us. But so the diagnosis, the way we figure out what it is a culture of the discharge that's coming out of there. You can see the horse on the your right, has burst and starting to drain some of that discharge. We can also, if it hasn't burst yet or we haven't been able to stick a needle into it to get a sample, we can sometimes diagnose it just with ultrasound that there's a big fluid-filled abscess there, and that's what this is in the picture here. The darker tissue or area in the middle is nasty discharge pus fluid that's in that swelling. So the horses that have it internally, there's also a blood test that can help to diagnose that, but it doesn't help with the horses that have the abscesses externally. So, and treatment, if this is something you suspect, definitely worth giving a call. The number one way to treat this is to establish drainage. Get that fluid draining to the outside world. We don't recommend that you let it burst on its own like some abscesses will have a tendency to do. Most of the time, these will burst with such a big wound that it's very, very difficult to manage. And if it's treated appropriately, the survival rate is really, really high. We'll also often put these horses on some pain medications just to help with the swelling and the discomfort. Antibiotics we really only use for horses that have internal infections. It actually can slow the development and the treatment of the horses that have the external abscesses, so we use those pretty sparingly. Prevention, unfortunately there's no vaccine available for it, so really our only hope at prevention is awareness and control, so limiting exposure to an affected horse that may have this. If we have lanced it and end up draining it, making sure that we dispose of that discharge, that it just doesn't go running out onto the ground. We actually should catch that in a bucket with a garbage bag and get it out of there. And then fly control, if there's a horse that's infected, go to town with the fly spray, because that's the last thing we need is flies, getting it on them and then taking it to somebody else. So that's the quick and dirty on pigeon fever. Sorry to rush through that, but again, I just wanted to cover it this year because it's been something that's come up several times. So thought it was worth mentioning for sure. The other diseases that we have seen, luckily we haven't seen too many horse cases of West Nile virus this year, although I'm going to forget the stat off the top of my head. I know there were, I believe it was 13 confirmed cases of West Nile virus in Western Canada in companion animals. They don't break that down by horses versus dog versus cats, so it's still out there, unfortunately. They kind of had a resurgence of that in California and some of the states this year where they had a higher number of cases than usual. So, so it's something that I think is definitely worth still vaccinating for. I don't recall any major outbreaks of flu or rhino this year that we had to deal with. Strangles was out there again this year. There were some barns that had to go through that. So again, I think that one is worth vaccinating for. And then the only other thing that we've heard some more, and it kind of tends to go around every year, but vesicular stomatitis and pyroplasmosis. If you're traveling to southern states, Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, California, definitely worth looking into what vesicular stomatitis and pyroplasmosis are and what you need to do to get your horse down there and more importantly to get them home. So, so yeah, those are all some food for thought, but I think unless anybody else has any other questions before we wrap it up. Anything? Excellent. All right. Well, thank you again all for coming. We certainly appreciate it.